Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Got Teleported to the 7 Deadly Sins World Part 2. Before we start, please go support Au.Makoto356 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made, there will be some mistaken character's gender, but of course Issei is a male. Chapter 7. The Wrath of a Dragon. After regaining consciousness, Issei decided to enter the battlefield. On the other hand, Golgius was hiding behind a house, watching as Elizabeth and Issei ran out of the building where they were. He now knew what the brown-haired boy was capable of. After being sent flying by him earlier, he had the audacity to understand how strong he was and why a plan was required if he wanted to get rid of him. I can't believe the strength this brat has. If it weren't for the hardness of my armor and my prestigious skill, I wouldn't be able to continue walking right now. The rumors weren't exaggerated after all. This boy may be at the level of a capital sin. I must find a way to kill him without exposing myself so much. So here you were, bastard. Golgius, while sweating cold, turned to see the owner of that voice, and indeed it was Issei, who had an unfriendly face, who was accompanied by his traveling companion Elizabeth. It can't be. How did they find me? I saw them leave the place. That's not a problem for me. It's easy to spot cowardly trash like you from miles away. I demand that you tell me who ordered you to annihilate me and who ordered you to kidnap Elizabeth. Okay, I give up. Huh? Suddenly Issei and Elizabeth, not expecting that reaction, Golgius raised both hands in surrender. Forgive me, I didn't mean to do that. I, Golgius, only follow orders from my superiors. I am really a coward from birth, therefore I don't want to fight with anyone, especially being a person like you. Golgius took the opportunity and with great speed he threw weapons to kill Elizabeth. However, in a quick movement of his sword, Issei blocked the attacks with great ease. But what the hell, how did you notice that I threw those murderous weapons when I raised my hands? You said it yourself, I am a stronger person than you. Before the knight spoke, a person crossed the middle of the battle. It was the doctor who had previously poisoned Issei. Golgius-sama, I finally found him. I wasn't able to kill the boy, but I did what you asked me to. I gave him the poison. Now please, I ask you to return my daughter to me just as you promised. Despite having the helmet covering his face, Golgius put on a sinister and evil smile, then disappeared from everyone's sight. Disappeared. Elizabeth, worried about the knight's disappearance, stood still, cautiously observing the surroundings, waiting for his appearance. For his part, Issei had his senses at their maximum, carefully watching the knight's next move. In an instant, he looked at the doctor and spoke worriedly. Hey damn, don't go there. In the blink of an eye, Golgius was in front of Dr. Dana. Don't worry, you will have your daughter. Oh really? No one expected Golgius to bury his sword in his abdomen. Dr. Dana fell to the ground while spitting blood, on the verge of death. I will send your daughter to the other world where you will be now. Dr. Dana. Elizabeth ran towards Dr. Dana to attend to him. Issei from his place looked at Golgius with contempt. You're a bastard. How could you do that to a person who couldn't even defend himself? But what are you saying? In my opinion, it was an act of mercy. An act of mercy? You know this scum, he already had problems. I just wanted to give him a better life. DSK, since I came to this world I have seen destruction, deceit and death. People who kill, they really have no forgiveness from anyone. It doesn't matter if the capital sins are not there, with or without them I myself will take care of exterminating them. Golgius just ignored Issei. He watched carefully as Elizabeth rescued Dr. Dana and prepared to kill her. Fortunately, despite his anger, Issei realized his intentions and quickly ran towards Elizabeth. The moment Golgius was about to attack her, Issei blocked the movement of his sword. I told you not to dare lay a hand on Elizabeth. Issei gave a strong kick to Golgius's stomach, sending him flying again. Issei went to follow his whereabouts at a high speed. Then Golgius buried his sword in the ground to stop himself from retreating. When he finally stopped, Issei stood in front of him. You will pay for what you have done. You think I'm going to let myself be intimidated by insolent kids like you? Golgius again disappeared from Issei's sight. Seconds later he appeared behind him ready to cut him, but Issei only moved his arm back to block the attack with his sword. Golgius was surprised, however he continued to disappear and reappear in different places to be able to cut Issei, but the brown-haired boy, just by moving his arm, blocked the attacks with great ease. For a while like this, Golgius gave Issei a slice, however his joy did not last long, because the brown-haired boy's body exploded and became a smokescreen. But what? I'm sure I cut it. Don't think you're the only one with surprises. The voice whispered in his ear, but before he could react in due time, Golgius was sent flying by a powerful kick to the ribs, thus leaving the smokescreen. Golgius stood up from the ground and had one of his hands touching the damaged part of his ribs, and you could hear him spitting blood. Later, the brunette came out from behind the curtain with an emotionless face. You're ugh. You just talk for the sake of talking. It seems you don't have the guts you brag about so much. You send innocent people to do your dirty work, and then you kill them so as not to leave your fingerprints there. You'll see that I can kill you myself. Bulgius disappeared and Issei did the same. In the following seconds only abrupt air movements could be heard, metals colliding with each other and giving off sparks the instant they collided with each other. In a few moments the banging of something was heard, then Issei and Bulgius came to light only that Issei had his knee stuck in the knight's helmet. Bulgius only made a small moan of pain and was shot several meters away, crashing into a large rock. Issei arrived where he was and looked at him defiantly. I'll repeat it to you once more, wire who sent you to take Elizabeth away. Again Bulgius ignored him and instead refrained from talking nonsense. Wow, despite fighting with my special ability, you were just playing with me, how disappointing. However, I still can't understand how you can perceive me. At first I didn't understand it, but when I saw the speed at which you attacked the doctor, I understood that your ability wasn't about superhuman speed or teleportation. But that you can only make yourself intangible, and another thing that helps me fight you is the fact that I have a special ability that allows me to see what is interceptible or impossible to see for ordinary eyes. I hope you understood why those same words that Drake said took me a while to understand. As Issei spoke as if he were someone knowledgeable, inside he was biting his tongue and had beads of sweat. If he wanted to make an impression and be respected in that world, he had to bring to the surface everything he had learned since he joined the Gremory clan until now. On the other hand, he felt anger and fury because he used two skills that he only wanted to use on his beloved Au.Makoto, but instead he used them on a holy knight. Draconary Vision, Passion Clone. Bulgius doubted such ability, but realizing that during the moments in which he became intangible, Issei's hazel eyes were exchanged for deep green eyes. I see, now I understand that you are an amazing guy, now I know that I have no escape. But right now I can't die. Nani? Bulgius took out some kind of artifact from his bag and threw it on the ground, causing an explosion of smoke all around, blinding Issei for a few seconds. The brown-haired boy, fearing what was going to happen next, waved his sword in such a way that it cleared the smoke screen. When it vanished, Issei became angry when he saw that Bulgius was no longer in the same place as before. He clicked his tongue in a sign of exacerbation and headed back to where Elizabeth was. Upon arriving, he observed how the princess was trying everything possible to prevent the doctor from dying. Dr. Dana, please react, you can't die. Elizabeth's tears were not long in coming, drops and drops of water running down her cheeks and some falling on the man's face. Why are you crying for my lady? Why did he do it, why? I'm really sorry, I just wanted my daughter back. So that's why he did what he did to save his daughter. Elizabeth and the doctor's gazes met with Issei's figure. The brown-haired boy just looked at the situation sadly. Issei-sama. You're right, they ordered me to poison you. I didn't want to, but if I didn't do it, they were going to hurt my little girl, and in the end I couldn't hold her in my arms. Maybe it's the fruit of my actions. After shedding a few tears, Dr. Dana closed his eyes, his life seemingly over. Both Elizabeth and Issei mourned the death of Dr. Dana, especially the princess who was about to break down. This is all my fault. Elizabeth began to cry harder. Issei looked at her confused. But what do you mean, Elizabeth? You have nothing to do with this, that bastard was the one who killed him. Of course it's my fault. But Elizabeth screamed. Issei fell silent. The girl shed more and more tears with every second. She really felt bad about herself. If we hadn't come to this town, the Holy Knights wouldn't have kidnapped Dr. Dana's daughter, and he wouldn't have had to die. All of these are the consequences that I have caused. If I hadn't looked for him to help me find the 7 deadly sins, Dilthander wouldn't have seriously injured him, almost leaving him on the verge of death, and Dr. Dana wouldn't have had to do this. It's all my fault. Well, I'm looking for the impossible. My kingdom is suffering. If I wasn't so weak, if I wasn't useless, if I wasn't delicate and kind, I would. Issei, tired of hearing Elizabeth insult herself, approached her, grabbed her shoulders and turned her to look at him. Elizabeth, don't put yourself down like that. You're not weak, maybe you're not strong physically, but you are in other ways that even others don't have. You were able to face these situations on your own. You decided to go look for the 7 deadly sins on your own. You traveled miles. You faced all kinds of challenges without anyone's help. All this time that I was unconscious, you took care of me. For me, you are not someone weak, but a strong woman who is willing to give everything for her people. I had already told you, but I repeat it again. For me, you are someone special. Even if I had to die, I will do it in order to protect you and fulfill the promise I made to you. Elizabeth felt a sharp pain in her chest, and her cheeks turned a deep red, and she felt a spark ignite from within her. Issei-sama. Issei got up from the position he was in, while blushing at the last thing he said. He scratched his cheek and looked away. Elizabeth stopped crying and instead put on a grateful smile. The princess finally understood those words that the brown-haired man told her, as he said, maybe he doesn't have the strength of a holy knight, but he has the willpower to keep going. Elizabeth got up from the ground and looked deeply at the brunette. This made Issei uncomfortable with the atmosphere that surrounded him. Hey, I guess we should go now. Continuing to look away, Issei changed the subject to get rid of that awkward atmosphere, however he never expected what followed. Elizabeth planted a soft kiss on his cheek. It was her gratitude for having made her open her eyes and for making her feel special. For the part of the brown-haired boy, he only blushed at the action of the beautiful princess. "Thank you very much, Issei-sama, I will cherish these beautiful words for the rest of my life." Well, I think that it's time to go. Once again Issei wanted to ignore what happened and prepared to leave the place. Elizabeth just looked at him amused and followed him. Some time later, Issei and Elizabeth had encountered Diana. Their fight began with one of the knights who was a member of the Weird Fang's ruin. At first, the ability of this knight was unknown, however, as time passed, Issei and Diana began to fight each other, causing the princess to be astonished. Shortly after, it was discovered that Ruin had the ability to cause hallucinations every time he moved the bell on his staff. Elizabeth, wanting to stop the fight between Issei and Diana, tried to stop the knight Ruin, but he mercilessly began to beat her without compassion. "This is really funny, plaf plaf, why don't you cry, princess, cry now, beg for mercy for your life." Elizabeth however showed no signs of wanting to scream or cry because of the mistreatment she was suffering. On the contrary, she had a smile that meant that despite what she was suffering, she was not going to give in to the knight. And while Ruin was having fun hitting Elizabeth, Frisia came up to him to reprimand him. "Hey stupid, it's okay that you want to have fun, but wouldn't it be better if we left her intact?" "Don't worry, I won't kill her, I just want to enjoy this moment. I like to see the face of the princess writhing in pain. Princess Elizabeth, I congratulate you for your great tenacity. In return I will have some fun with your delicate mind." Ruin was going to use his staff to make illusions for the princess, but he noticed that his accessory was missing. The bell was no longer attached to the staff. "What the hell, the bell is gone." The knight instantly noticed the missing object when he heard a slight giggle from Elizabeth. In fact, Elizabeth only distracted him a little to take the bell away from him and thus cut off Issei and Diana's illusions. "Damn you, princess, you were behind the bell all the time, how dare you, you've made me angry like never before." Ruin was going to give Elizabeth the finishing blow, however his arm was grabbed tightly before he could even touch her. He turned to see the person responsible for this, and to his amazement, he discovered that it was Issei. "You are a damn, the only one who can get angry about this situation is me." Issei had a gloomy look, while his eyes turned green, the aura that emanated from him turned the same color. "What is this power that comes from him? I've never seen anything like it." The brown-haired boy without further ado hit Ruin's abdomen. He complained of the pain, but he didn't have time to react because the brown-haired boy had given him a strong kick in the head and then he was sent flying. Issei at superhuman speed arrived where he was and proceeded to hit him repeatedly. Ugh. Ruin couldn't do anything against such a magnitude of attacks. Seeing this, Frisia wanted to help him, but before doing so she was intercepted by Diana. Returning to Issei, he dealt a great blow to the knight, destroying part of his armor from the waist to the chest. The brown-haired boy, upon giving him that last blow, stopped his attacks. "Wow, you really left me stunned, kid, those blows are scary, but do you think that with such simple blows you will defeat me?" Knight Ruin stood up, raised his arm slightly in order to apply all his strength. In this way he changed the appearance of the muscles of his abdomen and made them grow more than normal. "Haha, you are an idiot, my armor was just a disguise. As you see, my real armor is my skin, which is stronger than steel and metal. Tell me now, what are you going to do now?" Ruin received a blow from the brunette in advance, causing jets of blood to drip down the helmet of his armor. The moment Ruin fell to his knees on the ground and with both hands touched the point of impact, he looked at Issei carefully. To his astonishment he saw that the brunette was carrying in his left hand a kind of red gauntlet with a green gem in the center. Cough, cough, what the hell is that thing? Suddenly a greenish light came out of the gem in the center of the gauntlet, worrying the knight. "Hey, what are you going to do?" Issei pointed his hand at the knight's face. "Wait, why are you doing this? Are you still asking? Damn it. You've hurt someone dear to me. Wait, don't do it. Now I will show you my secret skill." No. Dragon shot. A powerful cannon shot around the knight, consuming him completely. There was a loud explosion that later turned into a large smoke screen. So in another place far away from Britannia. The sun was shining like never before that morning, thanks to that the extensive sea shone like crystal. The temperature was normal, it wasn't too hot, perhaps because it was still very early. The environment felt so fresh with the breezes running through the different places in that area. This is why some species of shellfish came out of the sea briefly in order to feel on their skin everything that was felt around them. Even the tides were so calm that morning. In one of the main ports on the outskirts of Tortoise, a woman lay on the edge of a boat feeling all that warm and vigorous atmosphere. To relax more she had her beautiful eyes closed. Ugh. Asuna Yuuki, a woman too beautiful to provoke the desire of men and the envy of women, was very calm breathing in that pleasant coastal scent. "Asuna, are you ready to travel?" The young woman turned to look with a smile at the new figure that appeared. Asuna nodded at the question asked of her. "Hi, I'm ready for the trip, Shizuku." The newly named female figure now known as Shizuku was only happy with the response she received. Shizuku was a woman of about 18 years old. Although she did not have a slender figure, her beauty was indescribable. On the other hand, her eyes were red in color, and lastly she had long black hair that was usually tied in a ponytail. Flashback. After arriving in Tortoise, specifically in the kingdom of Hylia, Asuna had to deal with the shock she felt from what had just happened, so she tried several times to remember what had happened right after a portal appeared. However, she couldn't understand how she ended up from her bedroom to being stranded on the outskirts of what seemed to be some kind of city or rather a kingdom. At first she was scared, and if it weren't for her great character, she would have completely lost her mind and panicked, but thanks to that she had enough strength to have the next ability to reason and thus have the answers she was looking for. In this way, they spent days trying to survive until the Holy Church welcomed her with open doors. At first, her discomfort was not long in coming since she was not used to living in such an environment. However, as time passed, she understood more about the world she found herself in and the workings or concepts that complemented it. At first, the brunette felt a great aversion or confusion when learning about the place where she was, since any human being would have the same behavior. That is because it referred to the humans who came from her world, and in conclusion, being a world where practically the supernatural or the fantastical did not exist, people would have a great impact and consequently would have an absolute denial or in other cases would lose their sanity completely. Asuna, in addition to being a strong mind, was also someone open. She did not have a religion or was one of those compulsive people who shouted or tried to convince people of the type of belief they had. Rather, Asuna defined herself as someone who adapts according to the experiences she lives. This means that simply what she experiences firsthand, she would accept it and only try to adapt to the new. Therefore, it was difficult for her to collapse or ridiculously deny what was already obvious. Aside from that, in a certain way, Sword Art Online, Alfheim Online and Underworld were also that extra experience that was of great help to him. So Asuna, with those ideas, was able to continue her life, and thus, with the help of the people of the Holy Church and the kingdom, she learned about the world they were in, as well as the magic and skills used by all of them. The books and the explanations of the most experienced helped her level of skills and knowledge grow. As time went by, Asuna, seeing how quickly she got used to it, decided to have a new life. And in a certain way it was really easy for her to say that, since she had no elements that made her suffer or desperately want to return home, since nothing tied her to her world. Her mother had died from a strange illness. Shino and Suguha, after what happened in Underworld, went to England for study purposes. Alice, after seeing that Kirito would never see her as more than a friend, chose to start a journey to discover the world more thoroughly, and of course under the surveillance of Wrath, the company that created the Alicization project. On the other hand, she cut off her friendship with Lisbeth and Silica for reasons that she really prefers not to remember. Now her father, the truth was that she did love him and perhaps he was the only person she would miss, but if she was honest, she never had a deep relationship with him for the simple fact that her father was attached to his work for a long time and never had time for her. So the only thing that tied her to that world was her boyfriend Kirito, however because of what happened she was left completely alone. It was clear that that wasn't what affected her the most, but what the man she loved the most did to her. So just as she decided to live a new life, she also decided to live with that pain. According to Asuna, wounds could never heal, you just had to learn to live with them. After that, Asuna had not realized that she came to the world at the same age as when she met Kirito, and probably the portal was to blame, but that did not matter to her. And she only cared about the future that awaited her. In such a way that while the years were passing in her path to improve and enjoy her stay in Tortoise, she met a woman of her same age who came to the kingdom of Hylia through the gods. The girl in general was the one now known as Shizuku Yagashi. With the arrival of Shizuku to Tortoise, Asuna discovered over time that the girl was taken from her family and that the gods were not the good deities they claimed to be. With all this, she deserted Tortoise, taking the young black-haired girl with her. For her part, Shizuku decided to trust her, since besides knowing that Asuna was trustworthy, she had this feeling that she had an air that made her look a lot like her best friend Kaori. As for Asuna, she was just happy to have at least one good friend to rely on. Then flashback. Returning to the present with her newly turned 18 years old, Asuna now had a strong bond with Shizuku, and at this moment they were technically inseparable. They had as their goal to travel to other parts of the world, specifically to a place that by chance she found in one of the books of the main library of Hylia. Well, it's time to start our journey, Asuna. Well then Shizuku let's set off for Britannia. Chapter 8. The Great Edinburgh Maze. Part 1. Issei finally after an intense battle with the weird fangs had finally arrived at the based prison. already there with Diana, who had an unconscious Elizabeth. The two brunettes had fortunately found Ban the Fox of Greed, although at first they had complications since Ban the Fox of Greed, upon hearing Issei's story, immediately without even thinking about it flatly refused to help them overthrow the Holy Knights and save the villagers who were under their control. Clearly Issei was filled with rage upon hearing that he did not care in the least about those exasperating matters for him. By insisting so much that he help him save lions, Ban decided to propose that if he beat him in a small hand-to-hand combat, he would help overthrow the knights. This surprised Issei, however. If he wanted to have the sin of greed on his side, he had no choice but to accept that deal without objection. After that battle, due to such intensity of power on both sides, the prison was destroyed to the point of only being left as rubble. However, despite the destruction they caused, the perverted brown-haired boy ended up winning the fight, and more than feeling proud or agitated, like his opponent, he was happy. He didn't know how, but this fight not only accelerated his adrenaline for the fight, but he was excited and felt good. He had never had a battle like that with someone before, and that made him feel that strange sensation. Well, I accept my defeat against you. I never expected a brat like you to have that amount of power. And with an arrogant smile walked towards Issei. Well then, as you promised, come with us to save the Kingdom of Lions. Ban put on a monotonous smile that was classic to his personality, then he turned his back on Issei and proceeded to walk. Issei was clearly surprised, but feeling offended by the man's action he began to get irritated. Wait, where are you going? Didn't we have a deal? Hey, you're really annoying, kid. I think you didn't understand what I said. Huh? Seeing that Issei didn't understand what she meant, she sighed in defeat and began to speak. Listen, I said I would help you, however I never mentioned that I would have to travel with you to do it. Issei was frowning. The man's irony and arrogance were really starting to irritate him. For Ban's part, when he observed Issei's face, he began to think that it was funny to make him angry, and so he promised himself to do it again if he ever saw him again. Well, if you have nothing to say, I'll leave this place. The chestnut, however, snapped with a bit of exasperation etched in his vocal cords. Hey, you don't you think that if we separate we will be in more danger than if we are united? Ban stopped again at that statement, and without turning to look at him he spoke to him, this time seriously. Fine, you win. If that is how you interpret my help, I will accompany you on your journey, but I will catch up with you later. Right now, I have to go to a special place. Issei relaxed his anger and questioned him again. Well, I'm glad you decided to help us, but where do you have to go? Could it be that this is another trick of yours to escape? You're really stressing me out, brat. First of all, what I do or where I go is none of your business, and second, what do I gain by lying to you? Well, if that's your decision, I'll respect it, but if I find out that you abandoned us, believe me, I won't rest until I find you and kick your ass. Ban internally began to laugh. The few hours he had known Issei was enough time to realize that he was very funny and that he was not going to admit in front of him that he was starting to like him. Fine, whatever you say, but you can look at it this way, you are looking for my companions. Well, despite being more defenseless, being separated will be better. Issei put on a face that showed his confusion. Ban for a moment wondered how that boy could be so cool and an idiot at the same time. Look, while I go to the place I mentioned before, I will take charge of looking for one of my companions, and on the other hand you and the princess can search somewhere else, so regardless of the fact that we are more defenseless, we will be able to find the others faster this way. Issei understood Ban's explanation, and then with a nod, approved Ban's plan. So if you are satisfied with my answer I have no choice but to leave, but before that Diana, would you like to accompany me? Diana for her part looked at her former teammate with a frown. Ban once again showed his arrogant countenance. Hey, don't look at me like that, the Brad and the princess are already a couple. It would be obvious that if you and I split up, we would have to be another duo. Besides, I haven't seen you in a long time, and I would like to talk to you about this in active time. Diana sighed and with no other choice agreed to go with him. Issei, we will catch up with them later, take care and tell me goodbye to the princess when she recovers. Issei showed her his typical smile and nodded at the woman's decision. Diana also showed him a small smile and proceeded to walk alongside Ban. As the two sins left, with Elizabeth in his arms, he went in search of his family and best friend. Ban, tell me one thing, I know you well enough to know that you didn't seriously fight Issei. Why did you let him win? And you better not come up with the excuse that it was because you were having fun. Ban continued with his arrogant face and answered his friend with the truth. You are so observant. I let him win, not only because I had fun fighting, but because that look and that feeling of doing whatever it takes to help people, it reminded me of him. Diana finally understood her old companion's reason for doing what he did. After that she didn't say anything else. She knew clearly that despite the unique smile that Ban had at that moment, the truth is that that smile hid too well the sadness he felt, and she understood it. The two of them lost an important person to them, that person who gave them a new purpose. That person who gave them a family, that person who was protective and charismatic, was no longer by their side. Time passed. Issei, after walking for a while, found his feline Kahaku, which was arriving at the town where the two of them were. Then Elizabeth had finally recovered after that fight against the weird fangs, and Issei kept her up to date with everything that had happened with the knights, the based prison. The encounter with the Sinban and the decision that the man made before continuing together on the trip. The latter saddened Elizabeth since her wish was to be with all the deadly sins, however her heart told her otherwise. Inside she felt strangely happy about the event that had occurred with Ban and Diana. This feeling was ineffable to her. Perhaps the fact of traveling alone again with Issei was the perfect excuse for the situation she was in. 2 days had passed. Elizabeth was recovered enough to continue lying in bed. It was time for her to stretch her legs a little, so there was no better way to do it than accompanying Issei to go shopping. Issei-sama, what are we doing in this village? Don't tell me that the supplies of alcohol and food in the tavern ran out. Don't worry about it, I have everything under control. I just came to buy some clothes for myself, since my current clothes are very worn and torn. I understand, and what kind of clothes are you going to buy? I guess formal attire for the tavern. I need to have something official that shows that I am the owner of the place. Elizabeth didn't know it, but Issei was excited to have a suit that would show that he was the boss of a place, since he got involved in the world of magic and beings that didn't exist for humans. The idea of being a leader of something was his biggest dream, therefore from there comes the obsession and the dream of being the king of the harem. He wanted the women who would come into his life to respect him and follow him at any time, to love him and be with him until the end. The two arrived at a clothing store and entered the place, which had a peculiar and homely appearance. The place was not too big like any other store the brown-haired boy had seen, however this aspect was replaced by the great variety of clothing, and that is what really mattered to Issei before the place where he was. The brown-haired boy walked towards the men's clothing in order to choose the clothes he was looking for, and which he clearly already knew which one to wear. Elizabeth just followed the chestnut closely while carefully observing what he grabbed. Issei grabbed a black jacket as his first item of clothing in the elegant suit section. Then he grabbed a gray vest and a white shirt. Then he went to the pants and accessories section and grabbed a black formal pants, which matched the jacket he bought. He also grabbed a leather belt and some black pointed shoes. Finally he picked up a pair of ties, the difference being that one was red and the other purple. It was then that he caught Elizabeth's attention and asked him which one looked better on him. It took her a while to choose, but she finally ended up choosing the purple one. The brunette thanked her and went to the men's dressing room in order to put on the clothes she had chosen. Issei entered the small closed space, closed the curtains, then looked at himself in the mirror and began to take off all the clothes he had until he was only left in his underwear. He carefully put on the white shirt. After buttoning it, he put on the formal pants, tucked the edges of the shirt into the pants, buttoning them in turn, then put the leather belt into the holes of the pants until the edges met and joined them together. Then he sat on a small bench that was in the place and proceeded to put on his point shoes and tied them in a kind of knot that could not be undone. Finally he put on the purple tie, the gray vest, and thus concluding with a black jacket. She looked at herself carefully in the mirror and then opened the curtains in order to show her new outfit. Elizabeth's eyes widened, stunned by Issei's new appearance. Issei, noticing that the princess was in front of him waiting for him, asked her what she thought of his outfit. The silver-haired girl unconsciously became nervous, causing her heart rate to increase and her cheeks to turn a crimson red. Well, I guess Issei-sama looks very handsome like that. When she realized what she said, she covered her face with her hands to avoid the embarrassment she felt. Issei, for his part, did everything he could to prevent her from blushing, but Elizabeth's words echoed in his head and hearing the murmurs of the people only made it impossible to feel embarrassed, so he chose to put that aside and pretend that he didn't hear anything. Well, I better pay for the clothes. Elizabeth, without saying another word, followed Issei. Minutes passed and the two of them still didn't say a word. Walking through the town they heard rumors that didn't help their situation at all. Hey, look at that couple of young lovers. They're so cute. Look at that guy's girlfriend, she's very attractive, he's very lucky to have her. The young woman looks like a princess, now I know why that guy fell in love with her. But those and more comments of that type, it caused Elizabeth to blush deeply and Issei to feel uncomfortable. Well, I think it's time to go to the tavern. I think the same as you. If you don't want to buy anything else then we can leave. The two young men, trying to leave that matter behind, were preparing to return to the tavern. Damn, I'm going to lose my mind if we continue like this, and the last thing I want is to take Elizabeth away from me. The brown-haired boy was going to speak to her again, but when he noticed the girl's absence, he turned in all possible directions and finally his gaze focused on a jewelry stand. There were 3 large wooden tables joined together, above them a large white tablecloth covered them completely and above that tablecloth, a great variety of necklaces, bracelets and rings. Princess Elizabeth looked at them with a sparkle in her eyes. Issei, with a smile that denoted relief, went to where she was. The moment he was by her side he saw with amusement the way she looked at those accessories. Certainly, Elizabeth could be very kind, friendly, shy, charismatic, generous, honest and be a woman who cares about the well-being of other people before her own, but she was a princess, and the luxuries of growing up as one made objects like jewels cause an illusion on her face. "Elizabeth, do you want a necklace or something?" Elizabeth had a reaction to what he said. The shine in her eyes went away and were replaced by eyes that reflected shame. "Issei-sama, what are you trying to tell me?" "Come on Elizabeth, you don't have to feel embarrassed. If you want one I have no problem buying it for you. But I can't do that. It would be hypocritical of me if I did it. Because you said so. It is not my purpose to make you believe that I am a spoiled princess. I don't think that about you. You are a princess, but a very special and unique one. Many are not as great as you. During these weeks that we have been together, I have gotten to know your personality and what you are really like. Just because you want a necklace will not make me change my ideology. I understand you. You are a woman and all women yearn and wish to have something like jewelry. Don't think that I am going to get angry or something like that. If you want a pendant or something like that, I will gladly buy it for you." The girl understood his words and smiled gently, expressing her gratitude. "Fine, but my condition is that you choose it." "Okay, if I get you to accept it, I'll do it." Issei, accepting his companion's condition, took a few seconds to decide which one to choose. He grabbed a small silver pendant that had as its main object a small precious rock. Elizabeth's eyes immediately lit up at the pendant the brunette picked up. "Does this, Elizabeth, look good to you?" "Hey, it's very beautiful. You have a good taste for grabbing that kind of pendant for your girlfriend, boy." The lady in charge of the stand, who had remained silent until now, watching the tender scene between the two in amusement, spoke. "Excuse me ma'am, but what are you referring to?" "I don't blame you for not knowing, since I assume you're not from around here." "Huh?" Both Elizabeth and Issei had a face that made them notice complete confusion. The woman, seeing the very similar reaction of both parties for a few seconds, put on an amused smile. "You will see that blue stone hanging from that silver chain is very well known and special to our people." "Why, is there anything special?" "Indeed, that precious stone is part of a famous story in our town." "What kind of story, ma'am?" "Don't be impatient, children, that's exactly what I was getting at." "Where do I start?" "You see, many years ago two young people met in the mountains that divided their towns. At that moment they fell in love with each other. However, unfortunately their towns were enemies, so they could not be together. Every night, with the help of beautiful white doves, they constantly sent love letters, and at the end of each letter, they put their promise that one day they would be together forever. Seeing this, the clan of the goddesses marveled at such a display of affection and decided to help them to be together. Therefore they made use of their divine abilities in order to create endless tunnels within the mountains. The two lovers were curious about how they would be able to meet in the place if all the tunnels were completely dark. However, the goddesses had told them that the caves had endless precious stones that had a special ability. And that ability was being able to see inside caves. Elizabeth, who was listening carefully to the little story, interrupted the lady with a question. She just smiled and nodded in affirmation. "Yes, but not only that, in addition to providing them with vision, the stones guided them." Elizabeth and Issei opened their eyes wide and were skeptical of what they heard. The woman just looked at the funny scene and continued telling. "It is easy to understand the brightness of those mysterious stones shown in a specific pattern, meaning that if they followed that trail of light, they would be able to walk through the tunnels without getting lost. The clan of the goddesses put this mechanism on them to prevent any type of circumstance, grateful for the opportunity that was presented. Every day, without anyone noticing, they went into those tunnels to taste their love and their company, but one day unfortunately the man died in the war that was present at that time. The woman, devastated by losing the love of her life, took her own life because she wanted to see him again. The towns, upon learning of this event, made a peace treaty, and finally the couple was buried in the highest mountain, and with this it was a seal that they would never fight each other again. Elizabeth and Issei were moved by such a story. However, Issei decided to ask why only the two of them had access to that strange ability. The lady turned her gaze upwards and answered him softly. "With love." "Huh? I'm sorry, but I don't know what you mean." "Only true love can activate the glow of the rocks, and that is why many who try to follow them would be lost forever in the tunnels." Issei understood the reason and stopped asking about the story. "I suppose this stone is one of those, right?" The lady looked at her with a smile and was sarcastic. "Tell me what you think." Elizabeth, feeling embarrassed by the question she asked, said nothing more. "I really like the story, but without sounding rude, why did you tell us this story? Why is it the basis of why that pendant is special? Look, that stone has a meaning, and it is that any jewelry that has it attached and is bought by a couple will mean that they are swearing eternal love." After finishing saying the last word, Issei and Elizabeth turned red to the point of looking like tomatoes. "He is not my girlfriend, boyfriend." In unison, the two denied having such a relationship. No, she's my friend, I just wanted to give her a gift. Okay, calm down, don't get so worked up if you're not a couple, I understand and I apologize, just take this story as a legend and a precious treasure for our people. Issei and Elizabeth calmed their exultation at the same time, then the brown-haired man paid the kind woman and left the place with the silver-haired woman. So what did you think of the story, Issei-sama? I guess it's too fanciful for me, but at this point it's not hard to believe. Elizabeth smiled for a few seconds and then put on a shy and cute face. Changing the subject, I thank you very much for the gift, Issei-sama, I promise to pay you back in some way. You don't have to do that, Elizabeth, you being with me is more than enough, and leaving aside that issue of eternal love, I modify that oath, and now my oath is that I will protect you eternally, no matter when or how, that pendant will be that pact. Elizabeth was moved by Issei's words, she looked down hiding her blush and gently grabbed a stone that now hung around her neck. The two returned to the tavern to rest a little and return on their journey. Well, Issei-sama, what would be the next direction? I really don't know, I looked for places that could be key to finding one of the 7, well I mean 5 of them. While you were recovering from your wounds, I talked a little with Kahaku, and it seems that it occurred to her that perhaps one of the sins is hidden in a place where there are no holy knights. And what is the problem? Issei scratched his cheek in embarrassment and spoke fearfully. Actually, to be honest, I don't know the continent of Britannia very well, so could you help me with this? Elizabeth laughed for a few seconds like a little girl, seeing how tender and cute the brunette looked when he got nervous. Well, no problem, Issei-sama. Elizabeth recorded the map of Britannia and then with her finger pointed to a specific place. What do you think here? Issei stared at the place the princess was pointing at and called out the name. The Kingdom of Edinburgh. If that is so, I say that perhaps this place could be one where a capital sin is found. Why do you say that? Isn't it a kingdom? Don't worry about it, it stopped being one a long time ago. What are you talking about? You see, my father told me that before its destruction, that place was considered a powerful kingdom because it had powerful holy knights who were in charge of protecting its people, but unfortunately when I was 4 years old, it seems that a seal that was kept there was destroyed, thus freeing the vampire clan. Vampire clan? That's right, when the people who were living there were released they were massacred without any mercy, or to make things worse, they were turned into vampires just like them. For this reason, Lions ordered the 7 sins to go to the kingdom to save the few lives that remained and exterminate the vampire clan. Now I understand that the place is devastated and desolate. I see, I guess that could be a capital sin. He wasn't going to admit it in front of Elizabeth, but he felt sorry for the vampire clan. What they did was wrong, but killing them without compassion and without a fair trial was not something Issei completely agreed with, but life taught him a very important lesson since he entered the supernatural world. Raise your sword and you will live, let your guard down and you will die. Well then we will leave tomorrow morning first thing in the morning for the Kingdom of Edinburgh, well to be more exact, what is left of it. Elizabeth gave the floor to Issei, and then the two prepared to sleep in their respective rooms. It was almost 1 in the morning when strange sounds were heard in the hallways on the upper floor of the tavern. Issei as always slept deeply without realizing what was happening around him. The door to his bedroom suddenly opened slowly with the intention of not waking him up. The one who entered the place was none other than Elizabeth, who just as she opened the door she closed it carefully, approached Issei's bed and stared at him. Why? Why do I need to be by his side to be calm? The truth is that I am old enough to sleep alone, but I am simply worried by the fact that there is something inside me that does not want me to leave it. The beautiful young woman got into bed with him and then without thinking twice she hugged him warmly. She made sure that the brown-haired boy didn't notice. Luckily for him he was still fast asleep. Oh Issei-sama, what is happening to me? Elizabeth remembered the moment a few hours ago when they went to buy clothes and then left the store. She saw how many girls when they saw Issei's outfit licked their lips, had fanciful dreams about him, and in turn blushed when they saw how handsome he looked. She remembered that negative feeling that came to the surface. She had never had that aversive emotion in her life, and when she was perceptive to notice the looks of other women towards him, they caused her to feel sad and angry at the same time. When she thought about it, something came to mind that related it to what had just happened to her. The words that Issei told her came to mind. I understand you, you are a woman and everyone wants or yearns for something special like jewelry. Elizabeth hugged Issei tighter, she closed her eyes afterwards and in turn had a strong blush on her cheeks. Issei-sama, if what you said is true then my greatest desire is to be with you. The idea of separating makes me feel sad. Also the fact of how many girls saw you today makes me feel bad about myself for carrying a negative feeling in me. With all that feelings are emerging very contrary to what I feel for my town or my family. I have the feeling of never leaving you. I have the feeling of not letting other women look at you. I have the feeling that you only take care of me. I have the desire that you are only for me and that you do not notice other women. It sounds selfish on my part, and it is something that should not compliment me, since I am not like that, but my heart burns and makes me let these emotions and these desires come to the surface. Maybe this is what they call love, and if it is the pot, then that is why I have the need to want to monopolize it. Elizabeth remembered all the times Issei stood up for her, protected her no matter the cost, and finally before falling asleep he declared what he felt. Issei-sama, I think I love him. Chapter 9. The Great Edinburgh Maze. Part 2. A few days had passed after the defeat of the Weird Fangs and the rescue of the Sinban. Issei and Elizabeth were now heading to the devastated kingdom of Edinburgh. Their goal was to find one of the remaining deadly sins and recruit him in order to end the reign of the corrupt holy knights. However, on the other hand, they would never expect the secrets that inhospitable place holds. Issei woke up normally like any other day, however for some strange reason he felt better that morning, he didn't know how, but that feeling was the same when he felt a great warmth when he woke up and saw Riaz along with Asia, sleeping next to him. It was evident that it was only a feeling of melancholy since on the one hand he had no one by his side and on the other, it would be impossible to live that again in the world where he was. Thinking about it, a treacherous tear came out of his eyes, realizing that some memories came back. Suddenly a few tears began to emerge, showing how much he missed the girls and how much he loved them. Because of everything that happened with Elizabeth, the holy knights, the deadly sins, etc., he completely forgot his main objective, to return home and see his girls again. Riaz, Irina and Kuroka, they showed him over time a strong affection and immense love. On the other hand, thanks to that affection, Issei overcame his trauma with Rainer and was able to trust women again and was able to love again. Knock knock. Issei-sama. Quickly, Issei dried the few tears he had with his arm and answered that sweet voice. Yes. Tell me, Elizabeth. Sorry to bother you, Issei-sama, but Kahaku asked me to let you know that we are in Edinburgh territory. Perfect, Elizabeth, thank you very much, I'll be right back. After a few hours, our heroes were walking aimlessly through the ruins of the destroyed kingdom. Incredible, just as you said, the whole place is destroyed. Hey, it's different to hear it than to see it with your own eyes. Issei and Elizabeth looked in amazement at that desolate and inhospitable place. Issei-sama, do you really think we can find one of the deadly sins? Well, now that we are here I am not very sure, but we should not give up so easily, we have to try. Hey. The two of them began to search tirelessly for all possible places, however, luck was zero for them, the entire place was devastated, there was not even a place to stay or hide, the buildings were simply downhill or were in ashes. They had spent more than 4 hours searching, but the place was simply devastated. Ugh, what a pain. Issei, exacerbated by the situation, decided to sit on a rock to rest. Is Issei-sama okay? Sure, don't worry, I'm just tired, you know the kingdom is very big and even in these hours of searching, we weren't able to find a single trace of someone or something. Elizabeth, upon hearing these words, put on a sad expression. Now what do we do? I guess we should leave this place, as you said this place is completely destroyed, I don't think one of the sins is crazy enough to hide in this place. Master. Catching the attention of Elizabeth and Issei, Kahaku went towards them as quickly as possible. Kahaku, what's wrong? Did you find anything? That's right, master, please come with me. Okay, Elizabeth, let's go. Hey. The two quickly followed the feline out of the kingdom of Edinburgh until they came to a small cabin in ruins, but intact unlike the rest of the buildings. Amazing, Kahaku, how did you find this site? I used one of my tracking skills. Wow, I understand very well, my friend. Thank you, master, but that's not the important thing. Humph. Without saying anything else, Kahaku pushed the door with her two little paws. When the door opened, she entered the place. The brown-haired boy and the princess cautiously entered the cabin. Upon entering, they were greatly surprised to see a corpse sitting on a kind of desk. Elizabeth was speechless at what she saw. Issei, containing his nervousness, spoke to his familiar. Kahaku, what does this mean? Does the corpse have any relevance to our search? Master, look carefully at the corpse, it is not important. Issei didn't understand what she meant, however Elizabeth was the one who noticed and told the brunette what she had on the desk table. I understand now, you found that scroll, right? Hey, I wanted to bring him to you, but I decided to let him see it with his own eyes. Okay, thank you very much. Issei approached the desk carefully and nervously, he needed to grab that piece of paper, but the idea of being near a corpse was not the best idea the brunette had. It was then that looking somewhere other than the corpse he approached, took the scroll quickly and backed away without thinking twice. Phew, what a relief. Excuse me, Issei-sama, do you think it's a letter from someone? It could be, maybe it is one of the deadly sins. Elizabeth, happy again for that statement, asked Issei's statement again. Do you really believe it? I don't know, maybe I have some unimportant information and that's it, but I suspect that it won't be like that at all. Issei opened the scroll and luckily for him it contained a text specific to a person. Whoever reads this will mean that I am dead, therefore all the information I know will be recorded on this sheet. All is lost. A few days have passed since the heartless demons who call themselves vampires decided to rule this kingdom, but that is not important in these critical moments. Surely the rumors that Edinburgh has fallen to these monsters have spread throughout Britannia. The truly important thing in the situation is an investigation that I carry out. It seems that the great labyrinth that is located outside our town hides a great secret. Labyrinth? Elizabeth, do you know anything about it? I don't know for sure, Issei-sama. The only thing I know is that they were underground training rooms for the sacred knights. However, for some strange reason many years ago it was decreed that all labyrinths were restricted to anyone. Issei thanked Elizabeth for her brief pause in explanation and resumed reading. We already know the history of these labyrinths, but there is something behind the history that we know. During these years, it has never been explained why the labyrinths were closed forever. Well, during these days hidden I found out that it was not only a training room, but a mortal room. Definitely when I discovered this I was terrified, and more so when I knew that the most experienced knights in battle who were willing to take their power to new heights would never come out of there alive again. The reason is not known, what caused this is also not known, and you may wonder what all this has to do with vampires. Well, I read classified documents where it was said that many years ago some of the vampires roamed these areas destroying everything in their path. Therefore a group of the race of the goddesses, in order to continue protecting peace, they locked the strongest of the group inside the last room. At first I didn't understand this, but I discovered that the labyrinth is made up of a large number of rooms. How many there are I don't know, and what is inside each room I don't know either. Despite the constant unknowns of this investigation, I was only able to find out in my last moments that all this time we have lived behind many secrets hidden within the same nation. As she finished with those last words, silence reigned throughout the place. Neither Elizabeth nor Issei knew how to react to such statements and discoveries. Master? The last thing Issei saw at the end of the scroll was the place where the labyrinth was located. He then closed it and sighed, showing his irritation. Incredible. I don't know what to say about all this that we saw. On the one hand it irritates me to know that despite the year that we are in there will always be regular conflicts in this world, and on the other hand laziness or anger. Whenever I have plans to go to a place away from problems, more come to me without even doing anything. Issei-sama, then are you planning to go to the labyrinth? HMPH, what can be done? After all there is nothing to lose. Well, if you decide to go then I will follow you. Elizabeth, I'm sorry to say this, but you'll have to stay in the boar hat. Hey, why, Issei-sama? You saw what that letter said. Even the strongest knights in all of Britannia could never get out of there alive. That's why I want to go with you. I would never forgive myself if something happened to you. Elizabeth, I say the same thing. I prefer to be on the verge of death than to see you with a single scratch. Issei-sama, I beg you to let me go. I really don't want anything bad to happen to you. Come on, buddy, it won't cost you anything to let her go with you. Inside the brown-haired Drake's subconscious he addressed him. Drake, but what? Come on, let the brat princess go. Drake, it is not my wish that whatever is there hurts you, besides those virgin breasts must be intact at all times. Leave your nonsense for another time and tell him yes. Is that I? Look at it this way, the labyrinth is a golden opportunity. If it's true that there are dangers there, in that place you'll be able to show off to the princess by showing her how strong and brave you are. If all goes well, she might even let you touch her breasts as a reward. Her breasts. Issei's mind. Issei was in a very striking space for his tastes. However, the really interesting thing about that situation is that in the middle of it all was Elizabeth, only she looked more shy than usual. Elizabeth. Please, Issei-sama, let me reward you for everything you have done for me. The princess was very flushed and very nervous. Hey, what are you going to? Please, I beg you to be kind. The princess unbuttoned some buttons on her blouse in order to show her cleavage. Wait, Elizabeth I. From now on I am all yours, my breasts, my virginity and my soul belong to you. Issei-sama, are you okay? She continued unbuttoning her blouse to the point of almost completely showing her large breasts. Unfortunately the voice of the real Elizabeth called him. End of the moment. Issei-sama, 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 Issei-sama. Humph. What happened? Suddenly he became very thoughtful. Is everything okay? Issei scratched his cheek while having a drop of an like sweat. Yes, of course, don't worry, I was just thinking about what to do. Elizabeth was going to let that go, but seeing closely how a line of blood was running from the brunette's nose, she asked him about it. Issei-sama is sure he's fine, I see blood dripping from his nose. The brown-haired boy quickly broke out in a cold sweat, wiping away the traces of blood, and began to babble. What blood? I don't see any blood. Oh look, I think this tension is causing us to hallucinate. Come on, let's go to the labyrinth. Without wasting any time, he grabbed the young princess by the wrist and led her towards the labyrinth. On the other hand, Elizabeth was confused by such a strange situation, however, she let it go since she liked Issei's way of being. At times, he could be a noble, serious and mature man, however, he also had a childish, carefree and strange side, even though Elizabeth loved Issei just the way he was. Time passed, the two arrived at the point indicated by the scroll, they saw that it was a large cave. They entered the site stealthily, preventing any type of catastrophe, then they walked until they reached the end of the tunnel, exacerbating our heroes. At the end of the place there was only a wall that prevented the passage. "Master, are you sure this is the place?" "Of course Kahaku, I came right to the place where the map indicated." "So why is there nothing? Does that mean it's over?" "Calm down Elizabeth, there must be an explanation for all this." Kahaku had no choice but to use one of her hidden abilities, which was a feline vision capable of perceiving hidden objects or places. She searched everywhere and finally found an anomaly in one of the areas of the wall. "Master, wait, I found something." "Tell me Kahaku, what did you find?" "There is something hidden in that wall." "Okay." Issei searched the entire wall for something out of the ordinary, in the blink of an eye he felt with the palms of his hands a stone different from the others, without thinking he pressed that structure, consequently that rocky part entered the entire wall and caused a somewhat unusual reaction. The cave began to tremble surprising our heroes, then the huge mural began to open revealing a passageway of stairs that went down. Looking more closely, the torches placed in a specific sequence were lit one by one. "Well the time has come. Issei-sama. Elizabeth, promise me that you will be behind me at all times if something happens, don't hesitate to leave the place." Elizabeth nodded at Issei's order, without any complaints. It's time to go to the labyrinth and discover what secrets it holds. Chapter 10. The Great Edinburgh Labyrinth Part 3. After what happened with the arrival of Issei and Elizabeth to the Kingdom of Edinburgh, the two had the mission of finding one of the 7 deadly sins, however unfortunately the place seemed to be completely empty, but on the other hand, the secret information they found was relatively a very large treasure. Upon reading it carefully, the two set out to investigate one of those strange hidden labyrinths, luckily for them after an extensive search finally with great courage they entered one near the kingdom. "Elizabeth run." Boom. An explosion along with a warning cry could be heard throughout the place. After that, a young brown-haired man emerged from the smokescreen caused by the explosion, while a beautiful young woman followed the brown-haired man, while carrying a small white tiger in her arms. Issei and Elizabeth meanwhile were breathing heavily and were running away from the explosion. It seemed that they wanted or had the desire to flee from someone or something, and indeed that concern that they had engraved on their faces was nothing less than escaping from what was coming from behind them. From the smokescreen came a crowd of what appeared to be skeleton monsters with red eyes and dark bodies, all of them each had a sword and a shield, clearly their intentions with the two young men were not very good. Some will wonder how all this happened. Well, when the couple along with Kahaku entered the place, everything indicated that the tunnels or in this case the floors were alone and uninhabited. It was not until lower floors where the problems began. Dozens of monsters and terrifying creatures plunged out of the darkness attacking our heroes mercilessly. At first Issei was able to defeat most of them without much trouble, however, as they advanced new and powerful enemies appeared in front of them. Of course, there came a point where the brown-haired man's power was not enough to defeat them. So in the end they chose to only use force on necessary occasions, since the option of using the balance breaker was beyond Issei's possibilities. The reason was thanks to what happened with the dimensional travel. According to Drake, the energy that surrounded them caused the energy that flowed through him and Issei to become completely destabilized. So within a couple of months while Drake fixed the problem, the balance breaker and not to mention the Crimson Cardinal promotion were in other words out of service. "Damn, if only we could find a way out," Issei snapped and cursed for not being able to get out of the place. "Issei-sama, do you think if we reached a certain point, we could find the method to get out of the dungeon?" "I don't know exactly Elizabeth, the only thing I understand now is why the Holy Knights never managed to get out of this place." "I love it." Suddenly, the scream of his familiar caused Issei and Elizabeth to go wild. Luckily, there was no need to ask the reason for his scream. In front of them, a huge army of all kinds of beasts and bloodthirsty creatures prevented their advance to the next floor. Elizabeth backs away. Issei asked the princess to turn around, however Elizabeth warned that turning back was a bad decision because another army appeared, so they had them cornered. As they slowly approached, Elizabeth had a look of terror and fear on her face. "Issei-sama WW, what do we do?" Clearly Issei had a drop of sweat expressing the concern and frustration he had. At that moment inside his being he cursed the moment it occurred to him to venture into that place, which was indicated from the beginning that it was forbidden to pass, and now because of that impertinence Elizabeth was going to die. Trying to find a solution to the problem, a miracle appeared in his mind the instant he saw the ground beneath them. He quickly devised a plan and authoritatively ordered Kahaku to use her true form and use the most powerful attack she had. But master, if I use the tiger cannon it would still be useless against them. Remember that those beasts have greatly surpassed my powers. The brown-haired boy for the answer only pointed to the ground where they were standing. Kahaku, looking at the ground, understood what his master truly had planned to do. Master, don't tell me what you have planned. Indeed Kahaku, if we want to reach the end of the underground, there is no other option than to make the most spectacular trap in history, and do not worry about the power you use, I will give you all my energy if necessary. Even despite the situation they were in, Issei maintained his characteristic smile. Kahaku only smiled and nodded at his master's order. After changing back to his original form, Elizabeth and Issei grabbed onto him, then the white monarch covered himself in a blue aura and thus gathered all his energy. Kahaku-san, whatever you're going to do, please do it now. The monsters were about to reach their position, but Kahaku, achieving his goal, was surrounded along with the others by a blue sphere, charged of course with great power. I love now. Without thinking, Issei gave it all his remaining power, and surprisingly the blue sphere changed its navy blue hue to a green hue as it grew larger. At the end, Kahaku jumped the highest she had ever done, and then shouted the name of her technique, to charge against the ground, later causing a large caliber explosion. Aya. As the time came to descend and destroy the underground, the princess kept her eyes closed and screamed, terrified of what could happen to her life. Elizabeth resists. Issei, although he had the intention of calming a frightened Elizabeth, knew exactly what it felt like. In his opinion, the sensation was more extreme than riding a roller coaster at an amusement park. Time passed and the basements were still unfinished. For his part, Issei was greatly relieved. Even if they could have continued on, who knows how long it would have taken them to get down to the top floor, and if they would survive it. For Elizabeth's part, she only had one thing, and that was the wish for it to end already. Following what everyone thought, Kahaku finally hit rock bottom, and again as it started, it ended in a strong explosion. Luckily for everyone, and it was clear that Issei and Kahaku knew it, those inside the sphere did not receive as much damage as it provided, and although it had the foundations to be a double-edged weapon, Kahaku received help in order to perfect it, thus achieving that the consequences of using it would decrease considerably. Returning to our heroes, Elizabeth was the first to react after what happened. She came out of the trance she was in, and when she quickly remembered everything, very impatiently she searched with her gaze for the location of her two companions, and calmed down when she saw the Kahaku, although she was back in her kawaii state and in a state of unconsciousness. She did not have to be a genius to know that it was only as a result of the excess of power used in the attack she used. Issei for his part was getting up, and to Elizabeth's amused smile, he had an exacerbated and annoyed countenance, while he caressed the back of his head with his right hand, trying to relieve the pain caused by the fall. Some time later, when Kahaku recovered, everyone explored the place where they were. Seeing that the place was completely dark and silent, fear once again took hold of their minds and hearts. Issei-sama, I don't know if you think the same as me, but I don't feel very comfortable in this place. I feel the same as you. I think I'm starting to miss the noises of those monsters. Master, I think it would be better if we do not separate under any circumstances. Both the silver-haired girl and the brown-haired boy nodded at the feline's advice and continued without separating a single millimeter from each other. They knew they had to do so. It was not the time and place to relax, much less think about whether to separate or not. Although they moved away from the monsters, they were clear that the place where they were standing at that moment was the last floor of the dungeon. The feeling towards that was ineffable, and they felt a great aversion to that feeling that was slowly consuming them. On his way, a voice echoed in Issei's head. Buddy, I think your time has come. Issei with a frown questioned his dragon companion what the hell he meant by moment. Oh come on Issei, you're not going to tell me that your perverted essence has disappeared. Greg, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but I just remind you this is not the time for your nonsense. Okay, now I understand that your foolishness of trying to look mature in this world miraculously is getting its true fruits. What are you taking about? I'm really surprised. I think I'll finally start to respect you. What are you talking about, reptile? The dragon started to laugh while Issei started to get angry. Come on, you're alone in a room with the princess. And? Is there anything special about it? Greg sighed at his companion's supposed innocence and decided to tell him what came to mind. I would regret saying this, but has it not occurred to you that you can do whatever you want to him? Finally Issei understood what she meant and his face turned a deep red. But she is my protege, I can't do that. But look, you have taken very good care of her, so it is only fair that she repay you in a certain way, like giving you her purity. Su poo poo purity. Sure, imagine, since you couldn't impregnate the Gremory girl you can do it with the princess. Better pregnant. Inside Issei's thoughts. Issei-sama, I hope we already find a way out of this place since I have the desire to. When the princess realized the chestnut tree had disappeared. Issei-sama. 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 Suddenly the presence of the brown-haired boy disappeared before her eyes. She tried to find his whereabouts, but in seconds behind her, she only felt an evil presence, which had very bad intentions towards her. "My little Elizabeth, I think the time has come to charge you for my services." Hi. In the following scenes you could see how the brown-haired man mercilessly tore the girl's clothes and at the same time groped her. "No, Issei-sama, I'm not ready yet, please don't do it, it's my first time, please I beg you don't come inside me, you'll make me a mother very young, no, I can't believe that you made me yours completely. My dear princess, I think your king and your master have finally arrived at your side, myaheha." End of thoughts. Issei, after analyzing a possible result of that, immediately pushed those thoughts away and exclaimed that he would never touch her that way. "No, I couldn't do that, she is very important to me." Immediately the brown-haired boy, without giving any further explanations, cut off communication with him. Drake, for his part, began to laugh as always. He really liked to tease him, but on the other hand he was happy for him, since Elizabeth was slowly changing him, and it was also due to the fact that his partner was slowly falling in love with her. Continuing with that uncomfortable scene, the couple walked for hours through the places, until suddenly, at the deepest part of that floor, they found a double door that was a few meters long. Another very unusual feature was that on each side of the door were two stone giants, strangely placed in such a way that they seemed to protect the entrance. They thought at that moment that their salvation might possibly be found inside that strange door, however they would never imagine that a treasure was what was kept inside the place. Chapter 11. A beautiful vampire princess. Issei-sama, after all, there may still be salvation. Issei and Elizabeth approached the place in order to take a closer look at the large door that was in front of them. At this moment I realized that the door, compared to the entire place, is in good condition and has beautiful details that decorate the doors very well. The princess, while continuing to look more closely at the details of the doors, leaned forward a little to look more closely at the two small holes formed horizontally in the center of the entire structure. "Issei-sama, what does this formation of holes mean?" However, his question was not answered and instead the door began to shake as if someone was trying to get out. It was then that he put on a nervous face thinking of the worst, but when he realized who caused it, he was surprised. "The hell with the details, all I want is to get out of this place as fast as possible." Issei, out of desperation at not knowing what would happen if they continued on that floor for a second longer, banged hard on the doors trying to force them open. The brunette hadn't realized, but his frustration caused his mature man's posture to completely disappear. For her part, Elizabeth only had a drop of sweat, skeptical of her companion's attitude. "This. Issei-sama." Luckily, Kahaku didn't have to be embarrassed, since a while ago she had decided to rest in the neutral dimension where her familiars were, who were waiting there until they were called again by their masters. Returning to Issei, he continued pushing or hitting the doors roughly to open them, then in a moment of carelessness, he did not realize that the structure was about to respond in the same way. The doors began to shine and show very strange seals to decipher, then a powerful electric shock hit the brown-haired boy full on, and then he was sent flying through them. Immediately the princess, frightened by what had happened, ran to his aid. "Issei-sama, are you okay?" Elizabeth checked to see if the boy had any symptoms that needed to be treated, but was surprised to see that he got up instantly. "Ouch, that hurt." Elizabeth was about to ask him if he was okay, but her vocal cords were silenced by the tremors that began to shake the place. "Should now what?" Issei, too nervous, began to curse his luck. Elizabeth only limited herself to observing the surroundings in stupefaction. Their gaze had met with the statues at the doors, and they realized that they were the ones causing the strong tremors. Indeed, the floors began to crack, and some stones of the structures began to fall from their places. The couple watched in astonishment as the stone statues began to shine and then transformed into two living cyclops, each magically carrying swords with them, which happened to be of a size proportional to their enormous eyes. Successively the two cyclops went to do their job, which meant that a new battle was about to begin. Issei, who had stood in front of Elizabeth to protect her, unsheathed his sword and covered her in green energy. "Elizabeth." Behind him, Elizabeth listened attentively to his firm and strong voice. "I don't have much energy left, no matter what happens you must stay out of this battle." Elizabeth, without protest, simply obeyed Issei's order and left the range of the battle. "Damn, this is going to be complicated. I'm really grateful that at least in the time that passed since our fall to this floor, a little of my energy has been restored." The battle against the Cyclops began with many cuts and dodging blows by the brown-haired boy, although unfortunately for him, despite the constant cuts of his sword, the Cyclops remained standing, completely ignoring the successive attacks. On the other hand, another complication was the coordination of the monsters, since when Issei had the opportunity to corner the other, his twin in seconds was the one who had him cornered. It was then that Drake, seeing his partner's complications, had to tell him the weakness of the Cyclops, which were their eyes. Issei then lashed out trying to attack his eyes. Finally, with great effort, he was able to bury his sword in the first one, consequently he knocked down the last one with his most powerful dragon shot. Now Issei was on his knees, breathing heavily, while holding his sword in order to remain standing and conscious. It was clear that Elizabeth at the end of that helped the boy, on the one hand out of relief at seeing minor injuries on him, but she was worried about his current bundle, although the Cyclops did not inflict very serious injuries on him. It was evident that they exhausted all their energy. Issei stared at the princess's worried look and with a calm voice told her not to worry. "Don't worry about me, Elizabeth, I'm just tired from the battle." "That's what worries me, Issei-sama, if you continue fighting like that you could enter a critical state." The boy just showed his characteristic smile and answered him. "Don't worry, remember who you're talking to, I'm a pretty tough guy to kill." Elizabeth just smiled at his answer. Before anything else could happen, the corpses of the Cyclopses glowed for a few seconds, then their bodies disappeared completely, in their place appeared two spheres, which were exactly the size of a hand. Issei and Elizabeth each took a sphere and analyzed it. Elizabeth remembered the formations in the center of the doors and finally understood what they possibly meant. "Issei-sama, I think these spheres are the access key." Issei didn't need to question what she meant, for the reason that he had realized that the spheres would perfectly fit into the gaps. "I understand, those Cyclops turned out to be the keys to get in, and now I also understand that in view of what happened, it seems that something very special is hidden behind the door." "Issei-sama, now that I think about it, will the vampire who imprisoned the goddess race not be found?" Issei paled upon hearing the princess's statement, that's when he sweated a drop of sweat. "Let's not rush, Elizabeth, it could also be that they put up protection just to leave us trapped in this place." The young princess only limited herself to putting on a face that denoted her confusion when she saw the brown-haired boy's carefree response. After that uncomfortable and ineffable scene, the two decided to try their luck and see if it was a room that sheltered something, or if it was an exit. Elizabeth placed the first stone, and then the brunette was centimeters away from placing his own, however a presence appeared behind them. Kahaku, Issei's familiar, had returned from the dimension she was resting from. "Kahaku." In unison they said the name of the new arrival. "Master and Elizabeth-chan." "Kahaku, what the?" "There is no time to explain, Master, I have a way to get out of this place." The couple was stunned by the news and immediately a burst of excitement appeared on their faces. "But we have a problem." Again his face changed to one of confusion and questioning. "What's up, friend?" "You see, after I went to recharge my energy, I was able to find out that part of my magic is scattered in the tavern. And that means that if there is magic of mine, it is because there are traces or essence of me in the tavern." The two were more confused than before. Kahaku sighed tiredly, on the one hand she understood the girl's ignorance, but her master's ignorance made her question if she was really the person who made him her familiar. "Master, you really don't remember your teacher Ria's classes?" "What do you mean?" "I really don't remember that time, when all the family members were present and Miss Gremory talked about the different abilities of magic." Issei remembered that before what happened with the portal, his Butchu Rias, for the International Familiar Day, made a special class where all the members' familiars had to be present, thus explaining unusual details about magic. In one of those explanations, she mentioned that there was a particular detail. Flashback. "And speaking of unusual things, did you know that very few people don't know one of the greatest advantages that their own magic offers?" "And what is that advantage, Butchu?" Iridide smiled and answered her precious pawn. "You see, Ice, the magic that each one possesses carries your essence, in other words your signature that you were the one who used it." "Sorry Butchu, I don't understand what that means." "My cute pawn, it means that you leave your trail every time you use your skills, and therefore others or even yourself can find that trail of energy." Now this comes to my next point, as its name indicates, energy can be tracked. An example of this are the demon's retinues, if in case one of the servants is in danger or needs help. The king's duty is to search for his pieces through the mana that they emit. Then flashback. "I already remembered, but Kahaku, what does that have to do with escaping from this place?" "You see, Master, if you remember, even the user himself can find the trace of his mana. Well, there is an ability of the same that allows him to teleport directly to the place where that mana is scattered." Elizabeth, who was listening carefully to the entire conversation between the two, understood, just like Issei, what this entailed. "So can we leave this place by teleporting directly?" "Yes and no." "Huh, what do you mean by that?" The tiger sighed and spoke sadly. "What I mean is that I only have the energy to take one person." The couple was completely disappointed to hear that. "Then only one person will stay in this place." Issei with a light and hoarse voice mentioned the consequence of the result. "I'm afraid I do, love." Without thinking twice, Issei had come up with an answer that was the most logical for him. Then with a firm and strong voice he spoke. "TSK, then I'll stay here." The brown-haired boy's quick response surprised the princess, while Kahaku sighed as if she had already predicted the decision her master would make. "Issei-sama, Elizabeth, your duty is to save your kingdom. If you were to die in this place, my whole life would carry an enormous burden, knowing that because of the stupid idea of investigating these labyrinths, the Princess of Lions died, so I couldn't allow that. But Issei-sama, I can't do that to you. It would be selfish of me to take the easy way out while you risk your life in this place. Elizabeth, you must understand that you must survive any obstacle. I cannot allow you to die." "Issei-sama, why do you say that?" Elizabeth was about to burst into tears. "Are you taking care of me just because I don't have any skills? It's because I'm weak, right? And it's because I don't have what it takes to take care of myself, right? Elizabeth, you are a strong person with a bravery that I have not seen in another being, so I would never in my life think that of you. The reason why I protect you so much is..." Immediately her cheeks turned bright red and she began to babble. "Issei-sama." Issei had actually planned to say it, but something in his heart was causing him difficulty in expressing himself as he wanted. Silence took over the place. Neither Elizabeth nor Kahaku dared to say anything because they were waiting for the brunette's answer. "Oh, for the love of the gods, say it once and for all." Greg, who had been listening to the entire conversation for a while, became truly frustrated. It was evident that he had always hated Issei's romantic scenes with women, especially when his partner prolonged those scenes with silly babbling and blushing. Returning to Issei, he just put all his effort into saying things, and finally when he was ready he let it out. "Why these months at your side made me love you as the most important and special person in my life." Elizabeth, upon hearing those words, her eyes opened wide, at the same time they had a special shine, her cheeks also turned a faint red, and her heart beat strongly. Once again she was stunned by his sweet words, she didn't know what to respond to the boy in front of her now, it was as if she were in a situation very similar to a statement taken from her books, which she always liked to read. After that, Elizabeth agreed without any objection to go with Kahaku, then she gave him a hug surprising him, and told him that she would wait for his return. Without further ado she left with Kahaku. Issei cursed himself internally for saying those words. Elizabeth clearly felt uncomfortable, he swore to himself not to have any more interactions like that with Elizabeth. Of course she would think that he wants something with her and would be upset for feeling harassed. He also laughed at it since for him, it was logical that such a beautiful and noble princess would not notice someone like him. Leaving that aside, he took out of his right pocket the round stone that one of the Cyclops left behind, then nervously placed the object in the hole. He waited for the result, and indeed when the two stones were placed, the doors began to tremble, then many magical seals appeared on the door, and immediately after those structures vanished they began to separate, giving the possibility of entering the place. Issei, without any more time to waste, seeing that the room was even darker, rolled his green pupils, thus activating his draconic vision, then with all the courage put in his mind and heart he entered the place. Upon entering, I stared at 2 rows of stone pillars, and at the top of each pillar were strange elements made of the same material, except that they emitted an intense purple glow, which served as support to allow one to see inside the room. Issei on one hand was glad that just by entering, the strange place offered the satisfaction of being able to see, on the other hand, he was disappointed to discover that it was not the exit or a passage to another place, but that it was simply a room belonging to the floor where he fell with Elizabeth. At the time he was about to leave the room, discovering that something of utmost importance was missing. "Who's there?" The chestnut stood still, hearing what seemed to be a voice, although hoarse, it was clearly evident that it was that of a sweet delicate woman. Checking that he wasn't going crazy, he turned around completely to see where it was coming from. In the center of the room, there was a large stone cube reflecting an incredibly beautiful golden light, therefore in a few seconds, that mysterious cube was revealed, also revealing something mysterious. The chestnut became excited and stammered in surprise. "It's a girl." Issei looked skeptically at what he saw. In the cube was a beautiful girl, although only her face could be seen, because all parts of her body were covered by the enormous cubic stone. Now that didn't mean that it was indecipherable to see what her features were like. The girl had long, beautiful blonde hair, which hung in such a way that her appearance was equal to that of a spirit from a horror series or movie. Consequently, another feature was her deep and huge blood-red eyes, even though they were almost hidden by the gaps in her hair. You could still distinguish how beautiful they looked. Her appearance was what caught Issei's attention the most. The girl in this case seemed to be between 12 or 13 years old, and another thing was her blonde hair. Even when it looked battered and uncared for, the girl continued to show her great beauty. Issei, although admired by her beauty, his rational sense told him not to trust her. In that way he remembered the girl who deceived him with her beauty, and when he lowered his defenses, she ended up killing him. The brown-haired boy, now that he had experience in those things, came to the conclusion that perhaps the girl was locked in that cube, since her history did not have a good past. With his resolution in mind, he stammered nervously and turned around to leave the place. I think I went to the wrong room, haha, see you later. Just as he was about to cross the door, the blonde girl had a quick reaction as she panicked, then tried to make him stay. Stop, I beg you, please help me. Hearing the girl's delicate voice, his legs immediately stopped, seeing that the girl seemed to be in bad shape, as her voice seemed to have not been used in some time, and therefore it sounded like a murmur. His moral side told him that this poor girl needed his help, however his rational side told him that he should not get carried away, just because she was a pretty girl. When images of Rainer came to his mind, he ignored his gentle side and chose to use reason, in order to leave the place. But the girl's broken and hoarse voice stopped him from his place again. Won't you wait? I'll do anything but get me out of this place. Irritated by the situation, he had a vein on his forehead and immediately turned around with his fist raised, intending to confront the girl. Listen to me carefully, I don't know who you are or where you come from, but no one in their right mind would release a person who is clearly locked up in a place where only dangerous beings live. A long time ago, a person like you did the same to me, so I don't intend to fall for the same trick twice. Without waiting for an answer, he turned again and headed for the exit. The girl, upon hearing the brown-haired boy's abrupt words, with all the desperation she felt, was on the verge of tears, so she made a last attempt to stop him. No, wait, cough, my intentions are not like that, I swear, I cough. However, nothing she said seemed to have any effect on Issei. For his part, he just left the room and continually made the attempt to close the door. Then the girl said her last words. I was betrayed. This time, Issei's reaction was different. A few seconds passed before he entered the room again and stood in front of her with a stoic expression. He didn't understand why he did it, but just hearing the word betrayal clouded his mind of all reasoning, and it was at that moment that his ethics had once again taken control of his emotions. Okay, I listen to what you have to say. The girl's beautiful eyes lit up when she saw Issei's return. Deep down she was really grateful that those last words were finally the trigger for making him return. So what do you mean by betrayal? What if it's true? Why are you locked in this place? The girl came to her senses and began to tell her story. I come from a very ancient and powerful race of vampires. For a long time I was able to have the privilege of having abilities outside the normal for my race. It was then that I decided to take advantage of that power, using it in order to protect and take care of my people. Shortly after, the ministers made my uncle king by telling me that I was unnecessary for the kingdom. When that happened, I agreed and it didn't bother me at all, but they were afraid of my powers and everything I could do. That's how, as a result of not being able to kill me, they sealed me in this room. But what do you mean by they couldn't kill you? One of the unique abilities is my ability to regenerate tissues, no matter how much damage I receive. In other words, I heal very quickly. Was that your most powerful ability? No, I also have the ability to manipulate magic. What are you talking about? I don't need a circle or a spell to do it. Issei was stiffened by the whole story told about the girl. The girl was a vampire, and not just any kind, but a beautiful princess of a kingdom, who also had regenerative abilities never seen before, and manipulations of magic or mana that broke all logic of the subject. At the same time, not identifying any fallacies in her story, he was about to give in to releasing her, but before that, he remembered the information from the scroll from before. Wait a second, can I assure you that you are not lying to me? No, why would I lie? The girl, surprised by that answer, nervously gave a quick response to her possible savior. The reason had nothing to do with a possible trap on her part, but rather her state was due to a great fear she felt if the brown-haired boy distrusted her and continually left to leave her locked up. There's something you're not telling me. The girl looked confused, not knowing what he was referring to. You had told me that those ministers were your imprisoners, so why did you omit me about the goddesses? The blonde began to understand the meaning of his displeasure. Before venturing into this dangerous place, I read a scroll which mentioned about a vampire trapped by the goddesses. I see, that's what it was about. Do you know? Yes, I know that story. I don't try to hide it because it's really told wrong. When I said that the ministers were responsible for my sealing, I never lied about that. Right after my uncle became king, I was offered the opportunity to still have the chance to help my people. I gladly offered myself, and my first task was to make a truce with the goddess race. Then when I went to ask for that truce, the goddesses slandered me and subsequently locked me up here. Which means that those ministers conspired against you so they could get rid of you. I really didn't lie from the beginning. His plan was to lock me up here. But my question is, why do we need goddesses? Why? They are the only ones capable of being able to enter the labyrinths without problems. So how do you know all that? A long time ago one of the goddesses came here to tell me the sins I had committed and the punishment I deserved for them. Issei analyzed again if the girl committed fallacies in the arguments, but her broken voice reflecting pain and loneliness, it was evident the sum of many points in her favor. Issei had no choice but to accept the story. I will believe in you, therefore, I will free you from the cube. Issei's mind. Hey Drake, do you think you can free her? Drake sighed and mentioned that one of these days, he would give his partner new classes. Okay kid, just place the boosted gear arm on the seal, and I'll do the rest. Thank you Drake. Back to the real world. Issei activated his gauntlet, impressing the girl immensely. Never in all his years of existence had he seen anything like it. Issei walked straight towards the stone cube in order to place the palm of his hand, covered in the boosted gear armor. The moment he placed it, green lightning surged out as the cube began to have strong reactions. Damn, this isn't going to give in. Boy, use all your power. Issei with a firm gaze and a severe attitude, applied more power. Boost 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 boost. The core of the gauntlet, with each boost it did, shone brighter and brighter. A simple magic stone will not defeat me, I will use all my power. Green lightning flowed all over the place, causing erosion and cracks throughout the rock construction. Issei now. Ah. After all, the stone was finally completely pulverized and the girl was freed from it. Before long, the girl's body came to light, her legs, hands, hips, arms and breasts were released from their prison. She then fell to the ground, drained of energy. Even though she had been released, the exhaustion of being sedentary for many years had taken its toll, and she was now unable to even stand up. Issei remained seated, that exhaustion caused by the release of the seal caused all his energy to be used up, and at this moment he was not in a condition to stand. Therefore Issei took out of the small bag he had, a flask of water. As he rushed to drink the liquid, then set it down, he could see the beautiful girl in amazement. Now that he saw her more closely, she looked even more beautiful, to the point of leaving him stunned and blushing. No, this is. In Issei's thoughts, he only deepened the scene, with a bright atmosphere characteristic of him, when seeing beautiful girls or especially seeing breasts. Those features that figure it is without a doubt the most monstrous combination I have ever seen. Issei remembered that she was a vampire and of course he related her to his friend Gasper, who was also a blonde vampire with red eyes. However, at the same time he saw the relationship between the two, he remembered the girl's figure, and indeed, that small body, small breasts, high-pitched voice, were the characteristic features of Lawless. He immediately related him in the same way as Gasper, to the most famous mascot in the entire academy, Kaneko Taoju. The lowly, a vampire and above all a princess, that fusion is the ultimate weapon. No, this is wrong, she is a stranger, it is unheard of to have fantasies with her. Issei's perverted thoughts were interrupted by the girl's unexpected movement. When he realized, she had both hands holding the hand that held the bottle. With a drop of sweat, he could deduce that she was thirsty, since the girl had probably gone years without drinking water. Do you want some water? However, he shook his head. You're warm. The young girl whispered. Warm? Wlai. What's your name? This time the girl asked a question, without giving importance to her previous doubt. Issei questioned himself if it was the right thing to do to interact with someone he had just met not more than 10 minutes ago. However, he had realized the girl's true nature, now that she was free, she didn't seem to have any evil intentions. Sighing in defeat, he had no choice but to say her name, after all he wanted to know more about the girl. Hi do Issei, but you can just call me Issei. Issei. The girl murmured the brown-haired boy's name to herself repeatedly, perhaps because she wanted to remember her savior's name forever in her mind. Excuse me, and do you have a name? The girl came to her senses and stared at Issei in surprise. Okay. Since we're revealing who each one is, it would be logical for you to tell me your name too. The girl immediately put on a melancholy face and said openly. Give me one. Can you repeat that again? A name, I want a name. But don't you like the one you have? Or did you forget it? I don't want the old one anymore, I'll accept any name Issei gives me. Okay if that's what you want. Issei began to think about the name quickly, the girl seemed desperate for a name. On the one hand he would continue to insist on asking her why she wanted a name, however he knew the waste of time it would entail. After thinking about it for a while he decided on the only name that came to mind. Do you think it's you? You? Issei scratched his cheek, while having a drop of an I'm-style sweat. Look, I'll be honest with you, it's the only name I thought of and well, if you don't like it, I understand that name belongs to the place where I come from, and it particularly means moon. Moon? Yeah, I'm actually really bad with names, that one just came to me by chance. Coincidence? Yes, when I entered this room for the first time, at that moment seeing your huge red eyes, covered by the blonde locks of your hair, I remembered the moon of the beautiful evening. The girl had a sparkle in her eyes, and in her mind she only repeated that name you. Now you see that I say it out loud, it sounds very stupid, it's normal if you get angry with me from now on. I like. Issei stood rigid and silent. Although he had that need to confirm what his ears heard, he knew perfectly well the reality. Hi, from today I will be you arrogant. The girl launched herself towards Issei with the purpose of hugging him, surprising him. This, you. Feeling the girl's naked body and at the same time being able to smell her fragrance, it was evident how he would react. In addition to stiffening, his cheeks became extremely red, even though the cause was those, it was still very difficult to have such affection from another girl other than Ria's. Just when he was about to ask her to get away from him, his danger senses were activated and with a quick movement, with both of his hands he grabbed Yu and threw her to the ground so that he could be on top of her. Yu didn't have time to ask him the cause of his actions, as the brunette's back was pierced with many large spikes, made of a strange material. The girl, terrified by the event, screamed Issei's name. Issei. Chapter 12. The new member. Arg. Issei unexpectedly felt a lot of pain throughout his body, and there was no shortage of reasons for it. On his back, there were none other than some strange thick black spikes embedded. Issei. Meanwhile, Yu was scared and worried for her savior. The girl clearly showed interest in wanting to do something for him, but her fear of just trying to do something hasty and then hurting the boy more, burned inside her. Curse. Issei's heartbreaking whispers grew louder and louder. Yu, not caring about the consequences, stood up from where she was and then hurriedly removed the black spikes from her body. Fortunately and to Yu's relief, the moment the objects were extracted, the holes in Issei's back began to heal rapidly. In seconds the wounds had disappeared, as if all those holes had been a product of imagination. Now that the wounds were healed, those groans of pain were exchanged for deep, ragged breathing. Still, although it was happiness that Yu felt, she was currently mentally wondering what kind of creature the brown-haired man was. The strange artifact on his arm, the strange green aura, and the high recovery rate that wasn't far from matching her own, they were the perfect models for Yu to conclude that Issei was no ordinary human. Thank you very much, Yu. Even though he was still breathing heavily, Issei thanked the girl with a slight smile. After that, the ominous sounds of a monster were heard above the two. Therefore, Issei clicked his tongue in irritation and then turned his gaze to what provoked it. On the ceiling of the room, there was a black monster several meters long. The beast had 4 huge scissor-like arms, along with 8 legs, and finally on the back was a sharp stinger. Then the brown-haired boy, seeing the anatomy of the creature, immediately realized that it was the closest thing to a scorpion. On the other hand, he also understood that the most certain thing was that this monster scorpion was meant to be the last resort to prevent Yu from escaping. Damn, now we won't be able to escape easily. The brown-haired boy looked at Yu expecting an answer, but instead, the girl looked at him deeply with calm and serene eyes. He realized at that moment the feelings transmitted by the girl and deep inside he laughed amusedly. Yu was someone he had met less than an hour ago, and at this moment, however, the beautiful girl completely trusted her with her life. For her part, Yu was confused to see the immobility in which Issei was, but then she did not wait for him to suddenly get up with a smile and subsequently hand her his bag. It was then that Yu noticed her lack of clothing. Seeing that she was completely naked, she quickly covered herself with a jacket and murmured to him. Issei no eki. Issei, although blushing at this, quickly moved to ask Yu to climb onto his back. Yu nodded, wrapping her arms around his neck and her legs around his waist. Okay, let's get this over with. The chestnut-haired man, sword in hand, attacked the huge scorpion countless times, while simultaneously making huge leaps in order to avoid its stinging attacks. However, no matter how hard or how many attacks he used, the bug's skin was stronger than any other known resistant material. Damn, if this continues, my last reserves of energy will be gone before I can even penetrate a bit of that damn skin. Mate, I think you'll have to find the weakest point. After that, with a super attack destroy it completely. Issei analyzed his tenant's words and looked for the point where he could attack with a super attack. Fortunately, the slices impregnated in his shell were the key to discover the weakest point. Then showing a smile, he saw that the head part would probably be the best place to finish him off. The brown-haired boy, after figuring out how to kill the creature, decided to hide behind some rocks and think about the attack he would use. Damn, if only I could use balance breaker. Definitely, curse his luck again. With balance breaker activated, clearly using super dragon shot would be perfect to destroy the bug. Yu, on the other hand, looked sadly at Issei, since she didn't have to ask him what he thought because his face itself said it. It was then that at that moment, she decided to make herself useful to Issei in order to show him her gratitude for having saved her. The girl got off Issei's back with a serious and determined face. The brunette then asked her confusedly the reason for it. After that, I don't expect anything next. Yu placed her sweet lips on Issei's neck and then began to bite it. What the buck? The brunette went rigid. A girl was biting him. He remembered when you told him about her origin and what kind of creature she was. Thus, he came to the conclusion that a vampire was literally sucking his blood and that on top of that, she seemed to be happily enjoying it. Thank you very much. It was really delicious. You but what? The girl silenced Issei and muttered with a small smile. Trust me, Issei. You emerged from the rocks and walked straight towards the monster. When she was in front of the monster, she raised her hand towards it while being surrounded by a strange red aura. Azure blaze. A sphere of blue-white flames formed above the scorpion. The sphere then hit the scorpion head-on. When the sphere exploded in a flash of light and you fell without energy into the arms of the brunette, he was stunned by what happened. His amazement at seeing such a great and powerful magic made him fascinated by the innate talent of the young girl. On the other hand, he was surprised to see that the scorpion's shell was seriously injured, perhaps not to the point of destroying it, but melting it and making the bug writhe in pain were several points in Yu's favor. On the other hand, while the brown-haired boy was admired by Yu, Drake gave him a good idea of what they could do to finish off the scorpion once and for all. Are you okay? Yes, high-level magic is very draining. Issei's smile was then exchanged for a serious face. Yu, I really appreciate what you did for me. And I know it might sound selfish of me, but could you do that magic again? I could, but it would be smaller and less powerful. Don't worry about that. I actually have a plan to finish off the scorpion and I need your help for it. Yu nodded and Issei subsequently walked away from her. Azure blaze. Yu cast a last spell with her last energy. Then, when the attack hit the scorpion, the brown-haired man descended a few meters above it. Boost 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 boost. With his armor gauntlet on, Issei began to increase the power of his attack. Okay, let's go ahead. Dragon shot. A powerful beam of reddish energy was launched towards the scorpion. A loud explosion followed by a curtain of smoke that spread throughout the room. Yu used her arm to cover herself from the thick dust. When it dispersed, the lifeless scorpion was seen, accompanied by a huge hole in its skull. In the blink of an eye, Issei was standing in front of Yu with a vast, emotional smile. It's all over, Yu. The young vampire smiled for a few moments before putting on a sad face. Issei then put on a face that showed his confusion at the situation. Is something wrong, Yu? Because? Why didn't you leave? If you had run away and abandoned me, you could have been saved. Issei suddenly started laughing, causing Yu to frown. However, the brunette after a while managed to control his ironic laughter and then put his hand on Yu's shoulder. You, only a madman would try to do something like that. You are someone who has suffered greatly, you were betrayed and locked away in this horrible place. Even now, you put your safety in my hands. When we just met not less than an hour ago, maybe I had my doubts before, but now I can honestly say that you are a sincere, kind, loyal and noble person. With all that, I see no reason to abandon you, and if for some strange reason a man does so, it would mean that he is rotten inside. Issei then pointed at himself with his thumb and said with a huge smile. Besides, to run away from a fight. There has to be a huge army of those things if they want to succeed in finishing off my iron will. Yu, apart from laughing internally, wholeheartedly thanked fate for bringing her a person like Issei. Some time later, the two went to another place to rest from the battle. At first, the brunette suggested to Yu to rest right there in the room, however, she flatly refused to stay there and firmly asked him to go to another place far away from there. Issei understood her reaction, after all, she was locked up for a long time and so it was obvious that the place caused her great emotional trauma. Returning to the present. Issei prepared a bonfire in order to be with Yu in comfort and also prepare the meat they took from the scorpion. Yu warned him that the meat of monsters had properties very similar to that of a poison, so he would suffer a terrible indescribable agony, subsequently he would suffer a slow and painful death. Issei told him not to worry, after all she confirmed with her own eyes that he was not an ordinary guy. Well, Yu, now that there is no danger. Tell me about yourself in detail. Now that they were sitting on some comfortable rocks and in front of the war members of the bonfire, the brown-haired boy decided to take advantage of the situation and get to know the girl better. I already told you everything about myself. I know, but I want to know more about your past and the past of your race. How were you imprisoned? Why? What were you doing? What did you have to do with it? I understand. You looked deeply into the flames of the bonfire and then began to recount everything that was implanted in her memories. Not even I know the past of our clan, I only know that we were a group of very powerful and wild warriors. My uncle Israf, who was a powerful war commander, was only looking for a way for other races or clans to venerate the vampire clan. It was then, during the time of the ancient Great Holy War, that my uncle tried to take advantage of the war and carry out an unexpected attack on the races weakened by it. Unfortunately for him and the others, one of the four most powerful archangels of the goddess clan, called Ludociel, realized his plan and as punishment locked my clan in a dimension far from this world some time later, in the millennia that we were locked away. We created a great civilization. So if they were locked up, how did you have contact with the goddesses? Even though we were locked up, the goddess clan had the world under surveillance. In conclusion, we could have contact with them. Issei had finally put the pieces together with that story. Thanks to that, they took the opportunity to get rid of you. You only nodded in response, her expression showing deep pain and sadness. Are you okay? Clearly Issei was worried about the girl. His intention was never to mention to her that she was deceived and betrayed by her own clan, but the damage was already done, there was no turning back, now the only thing he could do was try to comfort her. Hi. Issei decided to put the matter aside. However, when he thought about Yu's story again, he had doubts about the girl's age. It was then that he asked her roughly what date she was locked in the labyrinth. The moment she told him the answer, he stiffened. Fortunately, thanks to being in this world for a long time, he knew the kingdom's calendar perfectly, so it was only a matter of calculations to know the time Yu was locked up. It means that you've been locked up here for 300 years. Yu smiled slightly at Issei's conclusion. She would never have imagined the years she had been locked inside that room. Then it also means that you are over 300 years old. Yu immediately pouted, showing her displeasure at being told directly what it meant to be locked up all this time. What a lack of respect. Issei sweat-dropped as he looked away. No matter what world, race, or clan she belonged to, you had never in your entire existence had to tell a woman how old she was. Leaving that aside, do vampires have long lives? Yu, although she put down her pout, still had a clouded face, but even so, that answered his doubt. Not at all. What do you mean by that? The life expectancy of a vampire is normally 300 to 500 years. But there are special cases where there are a certain number of vampires who manage to live to be more than 2000 years old. And are you one of them? No, my ladle is different. Thanks to my automatic regeneration, I can heal very quickly and at the same time prevent aging. Issei's eyes widened at the statement. So you're immortal? Hi. Issei then had a gleam in his eyes, along with a cheeky smile. You really are awesome. I can't believe you're the most spectacular vampire in the world. Yu was surprised by Issei's actions, however she involuntarily blushed a little at the compliment. After that, Issei told her why he had strange powers and other things. Yu was fascinated to listen to it, the place where he came from and what he was, practically left her speechless. Obviously Issei hid his intimate things like the one with Rias, why there was not a single person in this world who had his absolute trust to receive that information, and even Elizabeth was not ready for it yet. Returning to the main topic, Issei also told her everything that had happened to end up being inside the labyrinth and his objectives that he set out to achieve. How true, finishing with this. My next goal will be to return home. Going home? That's right, although right now I'm on a mission to save Britannia. My main goal will be to return home and be with my family. I see. Yu once again put on a pained and sad expression. I no longer have any place to call home. Issei felt empathy for her, seeing her like that only meant that her heart and dreams were completely destroyed. At least inside his being, he felt relief that his despicable uncle was annihilated by the 7 deadly sins and therefore could no longer harm Yu. Issei then hummed thoughtfully and came up with a plan to cheer the girl up. Hey Yu, wouldn't you like to come with me? Yu immediately turned to look him in the eyes, a glint of hope etched in her beautiful red eyes. Hey? The brunette had a slight blush of embarrassment as he scratched his cheek. Well, come back home with me. Of course, before that, help me on my journey to find the 7 deadly sins and overthrow the holy knights. After that, come back home together, but of course, all that depends on you. Yu looked intensely at Issei with her eyes, seeing his sweet and sincere gaze, along with an understanding smile, her heart respectively began to beat strongly. Her world covered in emptiness and infinite darkness began to crumble and was once again filled with light and hope. Issei had given her a new reason to continue existing and to continue trusting in dreams. So do you accept? Yu with a strong determination ended up accepting her savior's request. Upon receiving the yes, a smile graced his face, but on the other hand he broke out in a cold sweat at what would happen next. The day he returned to Kuoh, Rias would first kill him for making her worry and then finish him off for going back with a girl. Leaving that aside, Yu had now joined the search club. Weeks passed in which Issei stayed in the labyrinth, and thanks to that time, Issei and Yu increasingly became more confident with each other. Also their constant fights with monsters made them learn to battle together as a true team. A great bond was forming. Finally, it didn't take long for them to reach the last floor of the labyrinth. However, as expected, the final boss, a Hydra, was the most powerful of all. Issei and you practically had a hard time defeating him, and in the end, as a last resort, in order to save you, Issei used the balance breaker. Fortunately, through a kiss, you momentarily transferred a regeneration in order to save the brunette. On the other hand, unfortunately, being unconscious, Issei did not find out what happened, and you took advantage of that to always keep that romantic moment in her heart. Now after so much adventure, the two finally after almost a month, were a few centimeters away from leaving the cave. Issei, with the skin of the monsters, used a secret ability that Drake taught him during that time, called matter manipulation, to rebuild his suit. On the other hand, he took advantage of the monster skin he had to create new clothes for you. He also used that ability to create earrings, rings and necklaces for the girl with magic stones. Thanks to the teachings of Riaz and Azazel, Issei had an idea of how to help you with the massive wear and tear of magic, even Drake helped him with that. After a few weeks of practice, the brown-haired boy was able to store excessive amounts of magic, and in the end he was able to implement it in objects. Now thanks to that, you had large reserves of magic, and therefore, she was already able to cast a large number of spells without wearing herself out too much. With her new clothes and magic storage accessories, you was ready for the journey alongside Issei. Are you ready? Hi. Issei grabbed Yu's hand, and they then proceeded to leave the cave with a clear vision of their dreams. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.